Welcome to Talkin Waukesha, the podcast where every conversation springs to life.
I'm Andrew Nofke.
And I'm Anthony Terrell.
And we're your hosts for today's journey into the heart of Waukesha.
Whether you're a local or just passing through, join us as we explore the stories, people, and hidden gems that make Waukesha truly special.
From community events to personal anecdotes, we're here to bring you the pulse of our vibrant town.
So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and let's dive into another episode of Talkin Waukesha,
where every conversation springs to life. Welcome to episode 2 of Talkin Waukesha. Today we are joined by Chief of the Waukesha Fire Department, Steve Howard. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
So we're talking with Chief Howard today because he is sadly retiring. I mean, sad for us, great for him. He's been with the city of Waukesha for 36 years, is it?
Yeah, it's a little bit over 35 and a half, coming on 36 in September.
We'll give it 36.
36.
Cleaner to say 36.
Yeah.
There we go. 36.
So 36 years. The last day is May 1st, or last day is...
Nope, that is it. May 1st. May 1st is the last day.
Well, we'll start off by saying thank you for all your time you've dedicated to the city of Waukesha. It's been fantastic having you here, and you've been a wonderful fire chief. But we figured, while you've been here for one of the longest times out of any employee. I think there's a couple people that have been here for 40 years, but figured we'd have you sit down and chat with us about your time here, and let's get started.
Sounds good.
So, in your tenure with the Waukesha Fire Department, what do you think your personal greatest achievements have been, and then kind of what have been the department's greatest achievements? I mean, it's hard to kind of narrow it down, but...
Well, yeah, and I guess one of those things is I kind of look at it as so much of what we do is based on a team. We go out. There's really nothing that we do individually. So you may get in a position where you get an assignment, you get a project, you become the lead. We just built a fire training center, and I kind of had the luxury of being able to spearhead that for one of my last projects here. But there was still a group of 7-8 other people working on it. Support from engineering, support from DPW, all that stuff that goes into it. So, I've really learned through my career that, you never do anything alone, especially in the fire service and in city government. And once you kind of start to think you're doing it alone, you're probably doing something really wrong. So as far as, as far as biggest accomplishments, I'm just proud of the organization and the level of service that we're able to provide. We, I'm very fortunate. As you said, I've been here for 36 years. Second generation firefighter. My father actually retired so I could come on the fire department. And we've just had the opportunity to build on things over time. If you look at the fire stations that we have, the equipment, the quality of people. We've been able to continue to improve and build on things. We've got, some of the nicest equipment in fire stations in the area. And really what that does is gives us the ability to serve the public well, and meet the needs. So I think that's, as the community has grown, our level of service has been able to grow. And I guess that's what I'm really, really proud of. There's not any, one particular event or something I look back on and say, oh, that was the crowning achievement. Although I do have to say, this weekend on Saturday, I came in with the crews and we did the first live fire training scenarios down at the burn building. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. That was cool. I was glad I was able to do that, before, the next generation of training people and the next chief and everybody gets to work on it. So that part was really cool. That's fun. My wife often reminds me of, how cool our job is and some of the fun stuff, because, you look at a fire truck and people are like, oh, that's cool. And I just think of all the maintenance, the cost, all that type of stuff. But in the end, it's really kind of, they're, I don't want to say toys because they're very valuable tools that we use. But, every little kid kind of at some point maybe looked at it and said, hey, that'd be fun to do. So occasionally I got to remind myself. And on Saturday, I got a chance to go. We did training, but I got to go play a little bit. Right. So that's fun. Yeah,
and I know you've mentioned, two parts. One, we kind of mentioned the fire trucks being toys. I mean, last year there was the Guardian Games event that the fire and police department held together. But seeing all the kids that were out there and being so excited about a fire truck and being able to see everything up close, it's great how much community engagement that the fire department and the police department together kind of go out and make sure that the public are well aware of what what equipment's out there and what's brand new and everything.
Well, and it's a nice two-way street because we're supported well by the public, and we go out and we get the opportunity to go to people's block parties, and we're invited and welcome there. And it's very much a two-way street. And quite honestly, it's also getting a chance to deal with people when they haven't called us for an emergency is really nice.
Yeah.
And then in those interactions, we always try to slip a little education in, a little preventative stuff. But it's fun to interact with the kids. I still like giving tours to kids every once in a while. If the engine's gone or somebody, family's walking by and you see a little kid walking, looking in the glass doors. Now we have the cool glass doors in front of the fire station. Occasionally I'll open up the door. Hey, you want to come in and look at the fire trucks? I still enjoy doing that too.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
So kind of like on that same wavelength, so I'm sure since you started to now, technology in the fire department has changed drastically. What would you say kind of is like either like the coolest or just like the most impressive like bit of technology that has just improved throughout your time on the fire department?
Well, just to give you perspective, I think we had one computer in the fire department when we started, and that was like locked in the chief's office, and only the secretary or the chief. No offense to the chief back then, but I'm guessing he wasn't using it. No offense. To now, you just look at what we're carrying for communication, but to narrow it down to one of the things, it's the thermal imaging technology. To be able to see in a smoke-filled environment to do rescue, to be able to get accurate temperature readings of the ceiling, to be actually able to see inside that burning building using that, thermal imaging technology, which was military technology that was been moved into the civilian. Now, it doesn't take away all the hard work and everything that you have to do, but that's probably some of the biggest. If you look at one thing, especially from a fire suppression side of it, and then it's just all of the equipment that we have now for being able to do diagnostic stuff for EMS out in the field and the level of stuff. And it's just like everything, I'm carrying a cell phone now that we can do alerting and paging, and it can almost work like a radio where, some of that stuff was just, you didn't think of, back in the day.
Yeah.
Computer-aided dispatching. Yeah. But the thermal imaging is kind of one of those that was pretty game-changing for us.
And is that something that's inside like the visor of the equipment, or is that something that's a separate device that needs to be used? Or?
So for us right now, all of our self-contained breathing apparatus has a little module on it. It used to be gauges, and now there's still an analog gauge, but there's it gives you the readout of all your stuff. It does diagnostics on your, and in there built in, we have a little thermal imaging camera there to be maybe used for personal safety, to do quick scans, and then all of our company officers have a handheld camera. Hopefully someday it's all integrated into the helmet and kind of, almost like a fighter pilot kind of thing.
A little more military style, but used for public safety.
But that technology isn't quite there. We're currently testing some technology that allows the firefighter to be tracked through the building, not only in like a vertical plane, but also, not only in a horizontal, but a horizontal and vertical plane to do location, especially if there's a downed firefighter or we find a victim, to be able to go back and do that. So we're partnering with a company called Ascent to do some of that. It's real in the beta stage, but doing some of the testing.
It's still very neat, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So
it's keeping everyone safe on both ends, and you can kind of do some analytics and reports after it of, this is how it all went. This is how we could have done it differently moving forward.
It does mapping, kind of like how your Roomba maps the house. It'll do it real-time mapping, so you can tell where some of this technology, they're starting to go and say, hey, what about this for the fire service? Or, hey, can we have a little robot that can go in and map the house and look for downed victims? And, who knows what it's been pretty exciting seeing the technology over 35 years. I can only imagine what the next 35 years are going to be.
Right. Yeah. And I can imagine, too, some of it is where you can't even comprehend some of the ideas. So it's like you don't know what you don't know, and then they come up with this technology that does X, Y, and Z, and it's like, wow, I didn't even know we could get to that point that that was an option.
Right. And now it's almost there's so many different platforms and so many different things to figure out the best fit, and then not to get information overload. And, now talking about you trying to use AI to manage all the inputs, and it's kind of exciting, but it's also a little intimidating at times too with all the technology,
Yeah, on the plus side, I feel like fire safety is one of those things that's like, yeah, you're not worried about AI taking over. You still need people. You still need human intelligence to kind of.
But if it can help us in our decision-making process or manage all the inputs that we're continuing to get for an incident commander, that can be very helpful.
Definitely. Kind of thinking about people who are perspective into the firefighting and EMT roles. What recommendations would you give, or what advice would you give to someone who is entering a career being a firefighter or EMT or hybrid of both?
Sure. There's no one magic recipe that brings somebody to the fire service. There's some common trends. So, to be a firefighter or to take out an application with our department, you need to have State Firefighter 1 certification, and you need to have EMT certification. So that's kind of, and it used to be those, the classic route was somebody worked in the trades, worked somewhere, and then was a volunteer firefighter, and then decided, hey, they wanted to do this, and kind of started applying to full-time fire departments. Now there's a ton of paths. There's at the high school level, there's dual enrollment programs where high school seniors, instead of going to the high school, will go out to WCTC and take those certification classes that I mentioned, along with getting college credit for their associate's degree. They're fulfilling their graduation requirements. We now have unpaid interns, somebody who's looking to get into maybe somebody who went down one career path and said, geez, this isn't quite for me, and wants to get into the fire service. We have some abilities for people to affiliate with the department so that they can be sponsored to go take the Fire 1, Fire 2 classes, the EMT, doing those things. The opportunities at the VOTEC are great. But in the end, it really comes down to we need people who are good people. People have good integrity, good ethics, good value, those traditional things. And people are physically fit. It is still, with all the technology, everything we have, it is still a real hard, physically demanding job. Advancing a hose line, although my personal protective clothing, all the SCBA, all the stuff that I'm, wearing today is way different than what my dad did. It's still hot, physical, dirty work when you get right down to it. So you need that ability to do that, and that servant heart, that willing to serve people, and make some sacrifices for something that's bigger than yourself.
And with those positions, do you have to have completed those EMT and Firefighter 1 classes, or can you be enrolled in them and then apply? So
we do have some ability that if you're really close to completing, that you can start an application, but at a certain point in the process, you have to have it.
Okay.
So some of it is just managing applications.
Right. So. And then do you know where people can apply?
For us,
yes.
Right to our city website is
Perfect.
the best place to do that. And I assume, giving the audience I have here, that's the correct answer, right?
That is the correct answer.
Since you guys manage the website, so it
was a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, did I get the A on that one?
Yep.
All right, good.
Shameless plug here.
That's all right. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And we appreciate it.
Yeah. So kind of following what you were saying too, we were talking to new people, getting them interested into fire. So in many articles over the year, you've mentioned quite a bit about mentorship. So what would you say is the best mentorship advice that you've received, and what do you believe is the best mentorship advice you've given?
The given ones. So the best I've received is I've been fortunate to work with a lot of people through my career, and it's hard to pick one particular piece of advice. But I probably the best one that I received was shortly after being promoted to chief. One of the retired firefighters who I'd worked with on the line, pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Steve, you got all this administrative stuff. Don't forget the people." and be involved with the people. And that one was probably the best. I've had a lot of great advice over time, or people showing me things, and a lot of it deals with, how you treat people, how you approach things, and that servant, understanding that we're here to serve the public. And yes, there's, things that you have to take care of yourself and do all those things. But really a lot of this comes down to how we treat each other, how we treat the public. There's skill sets and there's techniques and all those things that can be learned. But if you don't have the right heart for this, it's a tough career. As far as the best advice I gave, I don't know. I hope most of my advice is good, or you hope that I lead by a positive example in how I treat people and do those things. Hopefully I'm not one of those leaders that leads by bad example. That kind of thing. I don't think I am, but hey, there's certainly days that we could use a do-over, and I think that's the other part, is having some humility. Admitting when you made a mistake and being willing to talk about it, or just sit down and say, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that, or I overlooked that, and have a straightforward conversation.
Okay. So then I guess maybe for whoever may be the next chief for the fire, what advice then would you give to them?
Don't forget the people.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot, so much is about that, right?
Sure.
And managing that. And yes, there's always the managerial, budgeting, all those very important things, but it really comes down to the people.
Yeah.
Not only us, but who we serve too.
And I can agree too, the couple of times, or the many times I've been in the fire department for recording videos and stuff like that, the culture there too, just between all the firefighters themselves, it's always contagious. Whereas you can tell everyone really cares about themselves and the people that they are helping as well. Whether if it is helping me with something, they're all hands on deck when I just need one person.
Right. It's a really familial feel, like brotherhood and sisterhood kind of a
Yes.
thing. Like everyone's always there for each other, and they're always ready to help at a moment's notice, which is a fantastic feeling, especially going into public. Seeing anyone in public safety that is like, we want to help people. We're here to help people, and at all costs, really.
And a lot of people work hard at that, and it's not just me by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I feel like, you kind of alluded to it too, but it seems like your leadership style is very much, a servant leader of making sure that, you're out there to help everyone, whether it's, someone who's brand new to the fire service and, just joined yesterday, to someone who's been here for 25 years, to someone who's in the community. It's all about, helping someone no matter what, and, leading from any level. So
I'm not going to add to that one. I'm just going to agree with that one.
All right. I realized I could have opened that one up a little more, but so I guess we'll try and go into a little bit bulkier meat and potatoes. So what are your favorite memories from your career? Obviously you've got 36 years under your belt. So what are your favorite memories, favorite stories, experiences, hurdles you've overcome, things like that?
There's always the calls and the fires, the parade, the ENR church. You can think of all, some of those big events that are, hard to forget, stick out in your mind. But honestly, some of the stuff that puts a smile on my face more is some of the stuff around the station and working with people, and just, some of the fun in the downtime. Not all of it is serious work all the time, and just, working with a crew, as you said, kind of that family environment in a positive way, right? And just having some fun, and being able to enjoy yourself, and starting, instigating maybe some water fights on the apparatus bay, or just some of that stuff. And it's not the big events; it's some of those things that you remember of helping somebody when they're having a bad day, or one of the things when I was early in my career in the Fire Prevention Bureau, the Waukesha Women's Club was getting near the end of their run as a service club, so they were looking at some projects to do at the end, and we didn't have a fire safety house, and that was one of the goals. One of the things that we really wanted to do is get out into the schools better and teach a curriculum and have that safety house that we've had for many years. So one of my fondest memories is going with all the members of the board of the Waukesha Women's Club, and they, there's a range of ages there, and here we are in New Berlin because they had a house like we wanted to purchase, and going through a safety house with all these older women. They don't seem so much older anymore now that I'm of this age, but when I was, in my late 20s, they seemed a little bit older. And going through a fire safety house and talking about not only, the fun of that, but, their generous donation to really launch our program. So they donated all the money for that. So there's opportunities to do stuff like that.
Right.
Just still things that you remember. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through a fire safety house many a time as a kid, but I can imagine it's much easier as a child than it is an adult.
Yes.
They crawling along the floor, checking the door, checking the window, things like that.
And what was so fun was how into it they were, and wanting to check it out and do those things. So, there's some really neat opportunities. Working in the fire, I had a decent part of my career. I worked in the Fire Prevention Bureau, and getting out into this community and getting to meet some of the people, the business leaders out here, all the different things that are made in this community and are done, and it's a really nice place. I'm fortunate I grew up here. I went to school. I graduated from Waukesha North, so it's really neat to be able to serve my career in the community that I grew up and just see some of the depths and some of the wonderful people that are out there and some of the really amazing things that are manufactured in the community.
Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I mean, you've grown up in Waukesha. I imagine your father being in the fire service probably helped it a little bit, but what led you to wanting to be a firefighter and an EMT?
Well, the last thing that I wanted to do was to be a firefighter when I was 16 or 17. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it, but my dad trained me to be a firefighter my whole life. I've talked to other firefighters who have got, fathers in there, and it's kind of inevitably, you don't learn just to put a ladder up on the house. You learn how a firefighter puts a ladder up on the house, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the time I was looking to go into, quite honestly, everybody told me I should go do what my dad did. So of course, being a young kid, I decided I should do the opposite. So I was going to go into business. Nothing wrong with that. No. Started going to the UW system. I was working full time, probably enjoying myself a little bit more than I, probably should have been to be a good, productive student, and started seeing some of my friends graduate. They were a little bit older, and selling magazines door to door, and not, having really tight job market. Mm-hmm. And somewhere between the time I was like 16 to the time I was about 20, all of a sudden my dad got a lot smarter because his advice was really good all of a sudden. So
sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, so all of a sudden it was like, hey, that's a good opportunity. I looked at one career path and didn't like it, and then started to get an appreciation for the craft, the trade that my father was in, and was fortunate enough to take out an application, got offered a job here, and 36 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
So then, outside of the doing fire and all that, what was probably the most interesting or unusual job you had?
Oh man, I had a lot of different. I did house painting. I worked at the gun club, setting trap. Doing that stuff. But I was before I became a firefighter, I worked as a commercial tree trimmer. So climbing trees with chainsaws, doing arborist work. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a degree, but was, trained through the company I was in. So that's what I did before I was hired here. So that's probably the most interesting, but had a lot, typical growing up as a kid, had all kinds of different jobs and, little side hustles when you're, trying to, make some money when you're young, that kind of stuff.
What do you think is the best thing about the Waukesha Fire Department? I mean, what would you say puts Waukesha Fire Department above, any local fire departments, or why should firefighters or EMTs come to work for Waukesha Fire versus somewhere else?
I guess you're going to hear a common thread, but it's the people, the work culture. It's a good place to work. It's a good community to work in. We're appreciated. We're supported. And it's rewarding, but I really think it's the coworkers, the people there, and there's a lot of really good fire departments out there. But I really, I think it's a real good work environment. Not only just the fire department, but the city in general. The city has a nice place, and our services are valued. And we're fortunate. We've had good support. They're always, budgets ups and downs and those types of things, of course. But the fire department has a good resources. But you know what? Having nice fire stations and nice fire trucks don't matter if you don't have good people and good coworkers to work with.
So kind of bouncing off that too. So a lot of people see what fire EMTs do when they're out on a call. What do you do during your downtime, or what's your favorite activities that the stations do during their downtimes that kind of build that camaraderie and keep things light and fun?
Well, there is a lot of good nature fun that's there. A lot of the downtime is preparing to respond to the next call, checking rigs, cleaning the stations, doing all the training. But there is time for one of our stations just they went and pooled their money and bought a pickleball net, so they do little pickleball in the evening. There's a lot of those camaraderie things. There's a lot of activities that happen off the job where people attend events, weddings and kids' birthdays, and shift will have a golf outing or go to the lake and do some of those things. So there's a lot of activity, and it's just hit or miss on the day. Some days it's really really busy, and occasionally get that shift that's a little bit of downtime.
Yeah.
But the work day from the start of the shift till early in the evening is pretty structured, scheduled with a lot of training. There's an opportunity to work out, but we consider that part of the work day and keeping physically fit and ready to respond. It comes back to a lot of times it's you're hanging out with a bunch of people working
right,
with a common mission, with a common goal, and it's enjoyable.
So now that you're retiring, though, you're going to have a lot more free time in theory. Maybe.
We're looking for a fire chief. You interested?
No.
So I guess to kind of let the public know, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself outside of fire. What things are you into? Also, what do you want to do now that you're going to be retired?
Well, I'll be honest, for the last number of years, a lot has been centered around my work, and then I teach at WCTC, and I've been doing a lot of teaching. My kids are older now, so they're out of the house, but we're starting to have grandkids, so that's
always exciting and fun.
Yes, exactly. So being able to spend a little more time with my family, a little bit more travel. I'm still gonna work part time. Quite honestly, scaling back from a 65 hour work week to something a little more manageable. If I just stayed around the house and didn't, nothing against that, but I think my wife would go crazy if I was around too much.
Got to ease into it a little bit.
Yeah, so I've got about a month where I don't have anything planned. I'm going to go visit my son down in North Carolina. He lives down there. He's in the Air Force. So I got a little bit of things that we're going to do, activities, and then I'm going to start to do some part-time work. I'm going to work for a national association that's going to be tied to the fire service, so that'll give me a part-time job. So still have some ties, and I'll still teach out at WCTC.
Very good.
Oh, good.
And then hopefully, golf, get on the lake, get the boat actually in the water,
fun
instead
of thinking about getting it out.
Instead of thinking about it, exactly.
To be fair, about 2 months from now, it'll be, maybe 70 degrees.
Warm weather's just around the corner.
Yeah.
I hope.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood, yes.
So do you find yourself doing a lot of outdoor activities then when you're off the clock kind of a thing? Or?
Yeah, and just being outside, getting, it seems weird, but I still cut my own wood and I don't fully heat the house, but I don't charge anything, but I do tree trimming for friends, and that I just like being outside.
Kind of that outdoorsman light.
Yes, exactly.
I like my home comforts, but also if I can self-sustain, it's kind of nice too.
Yeah, spending a day outside, not in an office looking at a computer screen.
Yeah. So this is something that I wanted to know, especially on TV. There is the stigma between fire versus police. So kind of what is your biggest pet peeve about how that is represented in media like that?
Well, it all depends on the organization. Unfortunately, some organizations, there are, the two organizations don't get along that well. Thankfully, In my career, I can say, and it keeps getting better. It's kind of those things that we build. We have very good relationship and working relationship with our police department. We work very closely together on a lot of things, and our missions are very similar. Sometimes they diverge. Sometimes they have needs that are a little different than ours, but we can generally sit down and work those out, and gotten really good at doing that. So I think probably my biggest pet peeve, and I think it might even be a little bit broader, is everybody likes to rip on the government, right? And and quite honestly, our city government is very well run. I think the citizens, and I'm one of them. I pay my property taxes, and we get a lot of value for what we do. So I think that's always what kind of rips on me, is where it's assumed that there's the negative side of things, or the rivalries. And we're fortunate. We can we meet regularly with our police department. We work together well. I've really enjoyed working with Dan Thompson since he's been here. Chief Jack was great to work with. And I had an advantage because I did fire investigations, so I worked with a lot of detectives and had a very close working relationship with the police department my entire career, and have some really good friendships there.
Okay. Yeah. And then, do you ever see on TV, maybe like if there is firefighters on TV where they're doing something and it's like, that's not how that's supposed to work at all? Do you ever see anything like that at all?
We don't watch much fire-based stuff because my wife refuses to, because exactly that. It's like, oh, that's not real, or that. So I really don't watch a lot of the fire-based shows, and my wife kind of is like, ban that in the house because of exactly that. That's not right. I'm like, she's just trying to watch a show. So, I don't watch a lot of Chicago Fire or any of those types of things. So. Okay. But yes, there's, obviously, to make it interesting, there has to be things.
Yeah, the drama of it.
Or just even portraying, what a structure fire looks like. We generally can barely see our hand in front of our face in most structural firefights. Well, that doesn't make very good TV, right?
Yeah.
So there's, all those types of things. And I'm sure anybody in the medical profession or law enforcement or you name it, as you look at, the Hollywood type portrayal, everybody probably has that to some degree.
Oh, yeah. My always comparison, I'm a musician, so anytime I see someone like trying to play guitar or a saxophone, those are the ones I play, and they're just holding it backwards, upside down, and wrong, and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So good. It's good to know too that they don't get it right anywhere.
Yeah. So we had recently done a video, I guess not terribly recently, but within the last year, we did a day in life video with Sal, who's one of the firefighters there, and one of the segments had him cooking lunch for the departments. So kind of off that, is there a favorite dish that you've either learned to make or that you've had during your tenure at the fire department that you're like, this is my go-to, I always want to have that, or many dishes? And
well, it's been a while since I've had to cook on shift. Okay, so that I'll start with that. But I've had some outstanding meals. But there's this belief that everybody is a good cook at the fire department, and that's not necessarily always true. But we have the advantage of is that you normally bring your A game when you're cooking for the station.
Right.
I always relied on my grilling skills when it was my turn to do that. So I'd keep it kind of basic, but I'd go for something on the grill. I'd grill out and, do that, make sure you have a nice side dish, a good salad. We've gotten a lot healthier over the years, but it's still, some days we have some pretty good meals. But yeah, it's where you don't want to experiment with, I've seen some experimental recipes go really wrong, and, like a year later, somebody's still hearing about, hey, remember when you tried to make the X dish and it didn't turn out. So you're always bringing your A game, because you'll never hear the end of it, kind of thing, in a friendly way.
Yeah. So what's your go-to grilling food then?
I always, you could never go wrong with, I always did a lot of like chicken, but then good marinade in it. Try to do something. Tried to eat a little bit healthier, but that's
it's a struggle.
Yeah. And then there's always the quick meals. Hey, we need some. Always, a little bit. Always have some spaghetti, have some meatballs in the freezer in case you get a busy day and what you were planning on making didn't work. You can always throw that together real quick and have something to eat.
Have you had any really like abysmally bad meals that are like, I'm good now?
Well, I think sometimes a strategy, if somebody doesn't want to cook, maybe you don't bring your good meals. So I've had some, like hot dogs and, and I think there was a little like revenge factor there of you made me cook and I'm not going to want to cook, so I'm going to make sure you don't let me cook again. So,
So you kind of earn the place after you're like, okay, you cook really well. You're going to be on the cooking
right.
shift
You
often.
you can clean the bathrooms on the other side or something. I don't know.
All right, let's get back to a more serious question. So, 2023, you were awarded the First Responder of the Year. How does it feel? Like, kind of.
It was quite a surprise. It was very. It was nice to be honored up at the state capitol by our representatives. I don't know. It's hard. It's a really neat thing. I'm kind of humbled by it.
For those who don't know, can you kind of explain what that award is?
Yeah, so it is a public safety award that was awarded by the representatives of the state legislature for the city of Waukesha, and they seek nominations. Assistant Chief Hoffman nominated me for it. It was kind of a surprise to be awarded that. It had a really nice little ceremony up at the state capitol. My wife got to attend, and it was kind of recognizing my career and my service. So it's a very nice award to receive. I certainly wasn't seeking it out or expecting it, and it was very nice to receive.
Kind of looking back at the residents again, what advice do you have for residents to make sure that their homes are fire ready, that they're ready for kind of any unfortunate situation that may occur?
Two things. Looking specifically at fires, there's two things that I've seen over my career that really enhance survivability. Again, all the prevention things that we talk about, making sure you're using, if you're using extension cords, that they're rated for what they're using, we're doing, you're not overloading them, good common sense cooking things, clearance from your fireplace, handling your ashes, all the, that home safety stuff that's part of our curriculum. But if a fire occurs, there's two things that'll really have an impact on whether you're able to survive that. The first is having a working smoke detector. And I'd also kind of part with that, having a working carbon monoxide detector.
Definitely.
Both of those two things. And then the other thing that we see is sleeping with the doors closed. I grew up in a firefighting family. It was a sin to sleep with your door open because just simply having a door, even if it's a hollow core residential door, if that's separating you between the fire, your chances of surviving goes up tremendously. So there's a lot of public education out there to sleep with your doors closed. That's part of what we do to try to isolate. We control flow paths, but even with a you can have a pretty good fire going in the living room, and with that door closed, you have a fair chance of surviving that, right? But with that door open, that's when we start to see people who are getting killed outside of that room of origin. So that's one of the really big things, having that working smoke detector to give you that early notification, and having that door closed. Those really can make a huge difference. And unfortunately, we've had examples of fires where fire starts in the living room in an apartment. The one person has their door closed to their bedroom, the other person doesn't, and one makes it, one doesn't. And it really came down to having that barrier. So sleeping with those doors closed, and of course having that working smoke detector, are the two biggest things that I have seen in my career that make a huge difference for survivability if that fire occurs. Of course, prevent the fire from happening.
Right.
All those good kind of common sense things, all the public education stuff we do, but those are those real two big things.
So with smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors, if there's someone that needs assistance, either getting them installed or anything, is there something that the fire department can do to help them with it?
They can reach out to us, and we will install smoke detectors for people. And it's not meant to be the primary source of it, but if somebody needs a smoke detector, we have ones that we give out. We'll install them. Typically, after we have a fire, we'll go out and canvass in a neighborhood. We'll put out door public education things as door hangers, knock on doors, check to see if people have working smoke detectors, talk about fire safety. So we've done that, but we will provide smoke detectors for people. Again, if it's a rental property or something, really the landlord should be able to do that. But even we won't let somebody go a night without a smoke detector. We'll provide one. So we have that. We're very fortunate through different organizations, including the Red Cross, the PFFW. We've had smoke detectors donated to us that we can provide to the public.
And would you, I know I've seen this, and so this is kind of I'm looking for a yes answer kind of. Would you recommend that, when people change the time for daylight savings, that's like one of the opportune times to do their fire safety checks and things like
absolutely. It's normally, in the spring, check your clocks, check your smoke detector, doing those. For those, especially when people have challenging locations, there's now like 10-year smoke detectors where it's a sealed unit. The battery is in there, so they don't have to be changed. Sometimes that's a good option for people. But yeah, doing that, check your smoke detector when you change the clocks is absolutely a great thing to do.
And then the fire department I believe you're in charge of the tornado sirens as well. Is there anything that people can do for weather safety and weather preparedness? Actually,
that's done through our dispatch center.
Okay.
But we all have kind of joint input. Typically, the police officers are out on patrol a little bit more, so they might have some feedback in, or we're getting information from the National Weather Service that's indicating, like rotation, those types of things.
Right.
It's kind of those things that I think a lot of us have been taught is, one, being aware of the weather. Having a weather radio is a really good thing to have, or the alerts on the cell phones and stuff that are out there now, not just a weather radio, but there's a lot of apps that'll alert you, because the weather sirens are designed to notify you if you're outside. They're not designed to notify you inside your house. So that's one of the things I think sometimes people, even after we'll have an event, sometimes I know the city will get feedback, well, I didn't hear the sirens in my house. No, they weren't really designed for that. They're really an outdoor warning system. So making sure that when the weather's coming in, if you have a weather radio, that's great, or one of the many apps that are out there that can alert you when there is a warning. And then taking that warning serious and going to that protected area in your house. Normally that lower level in the basement. Wisconsin, we tend to have basements, but for those houses that don't have basements, getting into that interior room, having a plan. Having all those kinds of things.
Definitely.
So it's kind of a group effort for the weather alerts and those types of things. But yeah, we are capable. We do have the capabilities from our Station 1 and from our battalion chief's vehicle to activate the sirens. But normally that's always done by dispatch.
What would you say are some of the biggest issues facing Waukesha Fire Department as a whole?
This is always one of those topics that nobody ever really likes to talk about, but it really, and we've been very blessed with very good funding, but with the levy limits and expenditure restraint, the funding for the city is challenging to meet all the needs, and we've had a lot of really good years, and we've been blessed with good budgets to provide the service. But looking to the future, I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. And when you really look at the fire service, or specifically our budget, but the fire service in general, 93 to 94% is the people. We don't have a lot of variable costs. We have to have in our operating budget, when you take away the people, then you have some of your fixed costs for putting fuel in the rigs, heating the stations, and doing those things. And I'm not saying there isn't things that we can do to be efficient, to do things a little bit better, and we're always looking for those opportunities. But continue funding when expenditure restraint, or levy limits. Sometimes we're looking at a 1% increase and just look at inflationary rates.
Right.
So making the budgets has been challenging, and I see that is going to be a challenge for the future. And I think as a taxpayer, I appreciate lower taxes for my property tax, but there's also that balance in service. And the fire department, police department, public safety, makes up over 50% of the city's budget. So that is a tough thing. Or you can't just say, well, okay, we're not going to cut from public safety. Well,
Where does it
you
come
got
from
regular
then?
government services, you got DPW, you have all those things. So that is going to be the challenge that I see for the upcoming years, not just for the fire department, but for the city as a whole.
So as your tenure as fire chief is coming to an end, what do you think you're going to miss the most about being part of the Waukesha Fire Department?
God, I'm going to go right back to the same answer. I feel like I should come up with a better answer. I'll say the fire trucks. No, it's which there is. Like again, we talked about that earlier on. There is that coolness of the job, or that satisfaction of going out and providing service to people, making someone's day a little bit better, and doing the trade. It's there is some rewarding aspects to it, although it's somebody else's really bad day, and you learn to find that balance. But it'll certainly be the people. Just work with a lot of really good people, have long time friendships. So that part I'll miss. The biggest challenge we just talked about, I'm not going to miss those things. No offense, it's a needed and very important thing. The city takes it very personally, but
it'll be nice not to lose some sleep off of it.
It'll be nice to this fall not have a budget that I'm worrying about.
Yeah.
All right, I got some more kind of fun questions. So if you could become an expert in any skill, hobby, anything, what would it be and why?
Oh, man, that one threw me. See, I looked at the questions a little bit ahead of time, but I didn't notice that one. I would have gave that some more thought. Wow, that one's going to throw me. So if I could be an expert in anything and why?
Yeah, a skill or even a hobby.
I would really, I used to do a lot of scuba diving when I was a little bit younger, didn't have kids and doing that stuff. So if I could get, something diving back to I don't necessarily mean an expert, but something where you could do a little something to contribute to marine biology and science, and something that I know very little of other than I really like it and it's really cool, and still do some of that stuff. I think that would be really, really a neat thing, but I'm not quite sure how you can be a volunteer scientist or something like that, right? But being out scuba diving, being on the water is really peaceful for me. Being underwater, seeing that new universe, seeing the underwater universe kind of thing, all that stuff. That would be really cool. Kind of self-centered, but that would be really cool.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah. Do you have any depths of water you'd prefer to be in? Like, do you want to be like the deepest depths and seeing the
recreational diving. About 100 feet's enough for me.
All right,
I'm good with that.
And then with diving, have you ever been involved in any of the diving rescue teams that the city offers, or the city helps as a co-op with?
Right now we don't have a dive rescue team. We partner with Lake Country. We share some services, so we do some technical rescue for them, and they'll do our diving, but we certainly do surface training. And when I became certified as a scuba diver, one of the things I kind of decided then is I wanted to just recreationally dive.
Makes sense, yeah.
I give people a lot of credit that go out and do the scuba diving for, bodies under the water.
That's a really bad day for a lot of people.
A lot of bad, yeah. So that part I appreciate everybody who does that. I'm glad that wasn't something I did in my career.
Yeah, it's probably it's
looking at
really healthy, honestly. To keep
looking at pretty fish is an octopus and stuff like that is a little better.
Yeah, definitely.
So would you say scuba diving is like the most adventurous thing you've done, or have you done anything else that's maybe more adventurous?
I've done some cave diving, a lot of stuff when I was younger with scuba diving. So I guess that would be, to me it didn't seem overly adventurous, but it was a lot of fun. So, I'd put that in adventurous stuff.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'd say so too, because people, if anything, they go snorkeling, which is the little brother of scuba diving, not really getting in that deep.
Actually, I think it's harder to snorkel than scuba dive, but that's just...
Well, that's scuba diving, you have your oxygen all the time.
You have your air there and you don't... Yeah, exactly.
You go a little too deep and then it's just up and in.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair. I find it... I don't know if irony is the right word, but the man who's in charge of fire loves water. Right?
Oh, maybe there's something there. I don't know.
There's something in there.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a survey of every fire chief in Wisconsin and see if they like water more than fire. And most of them probably would, because I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you probably deal with water just as much as you deal with fire, then.
Yeah, hydraulics, all that stuff. The other thing that you kind of bring up that's kind of it strikes me as we're talking about it is the fire service. I found has been one of those careers where every time I was in school, whether it be in high school, doing my associate degree, undergraduate, even my master's degree, going, I'll never use this. Somehow it's come up, doing my undergraduate for, having to take the mandatory art class. Like, I'm never going to use this. Yet then we did public art project at the station. And just, the neat thing about what we do is a lot of math, a lot of science, a lot of different things. But every time I've thought that in some class, somehow the Lord's found a way to bring that back to me and say, I told you.
Yeah, it seems like fire science has gotten very almost regular to light engineering levels of stuff where you have to understand, how hydraulics work, how water pressure works, how, the science of how water is going to spray over a fire and how to, the thermodynamics of everything.
One of the things that's helped us in the safety end of it is for many years, our policies, procedures, a lot of how we fought fires was based on anecdotal observations. And as engineering is blossomed in all kinds of areas, but especially fire protection engineers and studying some of that. I started to, and I know this from my fire investigation background, started to say, hey, what we know in the lab, your firefighting tactics aren't matching up to that. And if you think about the amount of hydrocarbons in a house, so again, going back to when my dad would fight fires, a lot of natural fibers, real wood, a lot of metal, and the BTUs per pound of household furnishings that they were capable of putting out was a lot lower than they are now. So our fires, building might be the same, but the fuel package in there has changed greatly. And we were getting hurt and killed because we were using old tactics that weren't up to date. And thankfully through UL, NIST, some of these different research organizations who had people who were in the fire service said, hey, we got to get this knowledge out to you. So now you look at our textbooks, you start to have conversations in the fire station. It's a lot more science-based, true data-based, in looking at techniques, and we've evolved our again, it's still a lot of hard work. We still put water on the fire, but the tactics and how we do it has evolved to match the change in the environment. And that's one of the things that everything's always changing, and that's kind of one of the challenging but fun things with the fire service. And then plus just in the medical side of how new medicines, new techniques, treatments, all those types of things, it's continuing to evolve. So, it used to be, the adage used to be, hey, you weren't kind of smart enough to do certain things, maybe being firefighter is good, big, go break a wall, that kind of stereotype. And there's a lot of science, math, there's a lot of, computer skills, a lot of things that people need to have to be successful in the fire service.
Yeah, and you're talking about just changing technologies. I know the city has, I think it's 26, 27 AEDs that are publicly available now. How are you seeing that distribution of AEDs in public places benefiting the general public?
The AED programs are great, but I think what's even better is, the National Heart Association started looking at data and said that, people are very reluctant to do CPR because of doing the breaths and the mouth to mouth. And they started looking at the amount of oxygenated blood that's in your body and really kind of recognized that we were missing an opportunity that if we can just get people to do chest compressions, how that can certainly help. Now, it needs to be followed up quickly with an automatic defibrillator so the public access AEDs are there, but just the awareness of that in quite frankly, the dispatcher's abilities to kind of on the spot teach people to do CPR, give them instructions, and people's willingness now that you don't have to do mouth to mouth, and we see that value. So we're seeing in our data that people are getting a lot more involved when people go into cardiac arrest, that we have bystanders, a high percentage are now, we're starting to see, and I apologize, I don't have the data in front of me, but we're seeing an upward trend of people providing that initial CPR, taking those steps to help somebody. So that's really neat. We do have a Pulse Point app that has ability if you're in the vicinity of an AED and there's an emergency that's not in somebody's personal house but in a public area, you can be notified and if you choose, go help. It'll tell you where the closest AED is. So there's some technology that's out there. But, we're seeing people that are really willing to help others by getting involved with different things.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, we're, I think, wrapping up. I've got one more question that I'm going to be trying to ask everyone at the end of all of our interviews. So it's a little deep, too. All
right.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self some words of advice, what would you say to yourself?
I think. Wow, that is a good. That one I should have thought about a little bit more. Probably the biggest advice I think I would go back to my younger self, thinking about starting in the fire service, is to work a little bit harder at having that work-life balance. And kind of, I'll look at one of the things in my career, and there's times when I probably didn't balance my home life, my family, and my kids probably paid a little bit of a price for that, because this is such a career where you can really draw you in. Mm-hmm. So those were probably one of those things I would, if looking back and have some advice, I'd probably take a little bit more time for my family, enjoying some of the good stuff, not always pushing maybe quite as hard on the career in certain things. I don't have any regrets, but if I look back at it, I'd probably make sure that I did a little bit better on work-life balance. But honestly, I think that can be said. As a society, I think we're starting to recognize that need much better. Where it used to be, hey, work. We always said the family was first, but it never really did that. So those are one of those things. If I look back at myself,
I think,
and we're getting better, and that's a very subjective and hard thing. And especially when you're early in your career, learning your craft, maybe moving up in an organization, taking more responsibility. Sometimes it's hard to see the that whole picture. So that's probably one of the things. If I look back, maybe not advice, or if I looked at doing some things a little differently, I probably would put a little more emphasis on that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you.
And then, as we're getting ready to wrap up, do you have anything else you want to say? Kind of as a farewell statement or something to the city, or anything you want to kind of say? Like, obviously you got some time left, but
no, I'm very grateful and appreciative for the opportunity that I've had with the city. I look at my dad, had the opportunity to have raise a family, have a nice a nice career that's very rewarding, in an excellent community, great schools, all those types of things, and I got that same opportunity, and I'm just very appreciative of all the opportunities, all the great people I got to meet. When I was doing fire inspections, I could go through any business here and see what was being made here and do all that type of stuff. Some really cool opportunities to get an appreciation for how wonderful this community is. And there's always little struggles here and there, but people really take care of each other here, and that's a neat thing.
You still have time if you wanted to, talk with Chief Howard more, or learn a little bit more. He's at the station, 4 days a week? Are you on the California schedule? It's 4 on, 4 off, or is the life of a chief a little different?
No, life of a chief's a little bit different. Yeah, I don't work the shift schedule, but I do have a lot of vacation I'm using up. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But so I imagine if you see him at a couple events, say hi, say thank you. Will you be at Boots and Badges coming up here soon in early April?
I think I have a conflict, but we're trying to resolve that because my granddaughter really loves going to that. So we're trying to resolve the conflict. So
all right, yeah. For anyone at Boots and Badges is April 12th at Waukesha South, I believe.
Yes, that's South this year.
Yeah. So it's always a good time from what I've heard, and hopefully we can take back from what is it?
New Berlin
Brookfield combo.
Yep.
All right. Thank you again for spending some time with us and chatting with us about your time in Waukesha. We really, really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Talkin' Waukesha. We hope you enjoyed diving into the heart of our city with us.
If you have a story to share or just want to say hello, reach out to us on social media at City of Waukesha on Facebook. We love hearing from our listeners.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review if you enjoyed the conversation. It really helps us spread the word.
As always, thanks for tuning in to Talkin' Waukesha, where every conversation springs to life.